Bluey and Bingo were playing hide-and-seek at home. The weather was cloudy, the light dim. Bluey hid in her parents' bedroom closet. There, in a corner, she felt something. Moving things aside, she saw a tiny, never-before-seen door. It was old, made of darkened wood with carved symbols. The hinges creaked. Bluey opened it. A long creak echoed. A cold draft, smelling of dust, metal, and something sweet and putrid drifted from the opening. Inside, a dimly lit, endless corridor stretched with wrinkled, grimy wallpaper. The light pulsed. She heard a faint, muffled child's cry from deep within. Bluey quickly shut the door. Bingo found Bluey. Bluey tried to tell her parents about the door, the cold, the crying. They laughed, saying it was imagination. "There are no doors there," Bandit said. They didn't believe her. The next day, Bluey returned to her parents' bedroom. The closet was open. The door she'd seen was bigger, about a third larger, and now it was directly in the wall. Bluey touched it. The wood felt damp and cold. The symbols glowed with a faint green light. From behind the door came a distinct scraping sound, then a quiet, unintelligible yet alluring whisper. Bluey recoiled. That evening at dinner, Bluey again mentioned the door. Bandit nervously dismissed it. Chili looked worried. "I heard something," she whispered to Bandit. A faint thud came from the bedroom. Bandit went to check. He returned pale, saying it was just an old box that fell. But he avoided looking at Chili. He had seen something. That night, Bluey woke to a pulsing red light seeping from beneath her bedroom door. She sat up. Her heart pounded. She heard a distinct scraping, something dragging across the living room floor. Then a clear whisper, close, childlike, but distorted. Game. The door to Bluey and Bingo's room slowly, silently opened. Red light flooded part of the room. In the doorway stood Bingo, but it wasn't her sister. Wrong Bingo was pale, her eyes empty and black. Thin, black, vein-like patterns crawled across her fur. She stood unnaturally straight. Her smile was stretched too wide. From her mouth came a wet, hissing whisper. "Come here, Bluey, the game is just beginning." Bluey froze. She wanted to scream but couldn't make a sound. Wrong Bingo extended a paw towards her, too long and thin. From beneath her sleeve, something dark and segmented crawled, like an insect, but it was part of her arm. Sleeping Bingo in her bed stirred slightly, murmuring in her sleep. A faint irritation crossed Wrong Bingo's face. She slowly retreated into the darkness. Soon, the door slowly closed. The red light vanished. The room plunged back into darkness. Bluey trembled, pressed against the bed frame. In the morning, the house was cold and empty. The sun didn't break through. Everyone was asleep. The parents' bedroom door was ajar. Beyond it, absolute impenetrable darkness. A sound. A long dragging scrape. Something being pulled across the wooden floor. Then a faint wet squelch. Another scrape. A thin, barely visible trail of slime led from the door and disappeared under the couch. Silence. Then a long, wet, drawn-out sound, like something heavy and soft dragging slowly across the floor. Then a deep, heavy sigh, which cut off. There's a Bluey episode almost no one talks about. Not because it's forgotten, but because those who have seen it wish they could forget. It's called The Closet Guest. And according to rumors, it aired only once in the middle of the night, before vanishing completely. No official records, only fragments, and those who still remember what they saw. It started normally the way any Bluey episode would. Bluey and Bingo were laughing, throwing toys around their room. The golden light of sunset spilled lazily across the walls. But the camera lingered, just a little too long. On the corners where the light didn't reach. On the closet. On the door that wasn't fully shut. At one point, Bingo joked, "Let's play hide and seek, I'll hide someone in the closet." She grabbed an old stuffed toy, tossed it inside, and closed the door. When they finished playing, the closet door was open again, the toy was gone, and something subtle, had changed. Later that night, Bluey woke up. A soft, slow creak echoed through the room. She turned her head, heart pounding a little faster. The closet door was moving, opening wider, by itself. Bluey told herself it was just the wind, pulled the blanket over her head, and tried to pretend she hadn't seen it. The next morning she told Bingo. Bingo just laughed and said, "Maybe someone lives there now." All day Bluey felt it. That weight, that pressure, the feeling that something, or someone, was watching her. From the hallway, from the shadows, from the closet. She asked her parents if there could be a draft. Bandit smiled, ruffled her ears and said, Old house, sweetheart. Houses creak, that's all. But that night the noises grew louder. Bluey woke again, this time to breathing, deep, slow, wrong. It wasn't Bingo, it wasn't Mom or Dad. It came from the closet. The door was wide open now, and deep in the darkness, something caught the light. Two small glinting dots, like eyes. Too low to belong to an adult, too high to be a toy. Bluey froze under her blanket, listened. The breathing grew closer, soft footsteps across the floor. A pause, and then a voice, strange, a little too high, a little too familiar. It whispered, "Don't be afraid, let's play." In the morning, Bluey tried to tell her parents. They just smiled too tightly and said it must have been a bad dream. No one mentioned it again. But over the next few days, Bluey changed. She spoke less, smiled less, stopped leaving her room unless she was called. And every time she sat down, her eyes, wide and unblinking, and stayed locked onto the closet door. In the last part of the episode, the family sat around the breakfast table. Normal conversation, normal laughter. But the camera ignored them. It pushed closer to Bluey. She sat perfectly still, her food untouched, her gaze empty. And just behind her, at the very end of the hallway, the closet door. And for a fraction of a second, a tall, crooked shadow slipped across it. The final scene showed Bluey's bedroom again. Nighttime, silent. Bingo slept peacefully. But Bluey sat across from the open closet, staring deep into the void. And she whispered, "Now it's my turn to hide." The camera pulled back, slowly. The window behind them showed the dark street outside, still, abandoned. No movement, no sound. Just the faint, almost imperceptible creak of a door opening wider. And then, blackness, total silence. After Bluey whispered, "Now it's my turn to hide," the room felt colder. The open closet door was a deeper black than any shadow, a void that seemed to pull at the edges of the room. Bingo still slept peacefully, unaware, but Bluey, unblinking, rose from the floor. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost too graceful. She walked to the closet not like herself but like something else was guiding her. The air around her shimmered, barely perceptible. Without hesitation, she stepped into the darkness of the closet. The door swung shut behind her, not with a creak but with a soft final click. The room was silent again, save for Bingo's gentle breathing and the faintest, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to emanate from the closet itself. The next morning, Bingo woke up. Bluey wasn't in her bed. Bingo called her name, no answer. She checked the closet. It was empty. The family began to search. Bandit and Chili called out for Bluey, their voices growing increasingly strained. They looked under beds, behind curtains, in every corner of the house. No sign of her. The house felt different now. Colder in certain spots, and a faint sweet smell, like damp earth mixed with something metallic, hung in the air, especially near the closet. Bandit tried to joke, maybe she's playing a really good hiding game. But his smile was tight, his eyes darting towards the closet door. Days turned into weeks. Bluey was still gone. The parents grew quieter, their laughter replaced by long silences. Bingo seemed confused, asking about Bluey less and less. The strange smell in the house intensified, sometimes accompanied by a soft rhythmic thump-thump-thump from within the walls. Usually when no one was looking directly at the closet. Bandit tried to cover the closet door with a blanket, then with a piece of wood, but every morning the blanket was on the floor, the wood leaning against the wall, and the closet door was open a tiny crack, just as it had been. One night, Bingo woke up, not to a creak or breathing but to a soft rhythmic scratching sound. It came from the closet. She looked towards it. The door was wide open, and from the deepest part of the darkness something began to emerge. It was tall, impossibly thin and crooked, like a shadow stretched too far. Its limbs moved with an unnatural jerkiness, and where its face should have been, there were only two faintly glowing wet points of light. Eyes that were too low for an adult, too high for a toy, and yet somehow chillingly familiar. It stepped fully into the room. The creature moved towards Bingo's bed. It was silent except for the continued soft scratching from its fingers dragging on the floor. It stopped beside Bingo's bed, towering over her. It tilted its head, and from its depths a voice emerged. Strange, a little too high, a little too familiar. It was Bluey's voice, but wrong, stretched, distorted. It whispered, "Don't be afraid, now it's your turn to hide with me." The camera pushed in on Bingo's face, wide with terror as a long crooked shadow enveloped her. Then blackness, total silence. There's a lost Bluey episode, one that almost feels like a story parents made up to scare their kids. It's called The Nameless Boy. It aired once, if it ever aired at all. Some say it showed up on early morning TV without warning. The episode starts with Bluey and Bingo at the park. It's a cloudy day. The colors are muted. The air feels heavy. They play on the swings, the slides, the usual games. Then Bluey notices him, a boy, sitting alone at the far end of the playground. He doesn't move, he doesn't smile, he just watches. His clothes are old, faded, his fur is pale, almost colorless. Bluey waves. The boy doesn't wave back. Bingo doesn't seem to notice him at first. But later, she whispers, "I don't like him." When Bluey asks why, Bingo says, "Because he knows your name." That night, Bluey dreams of the park, of the boy. He stands closer now, right outside the swings. His mouth moves, but no sound comes out. The next day, Bluey sees him again, not at the park, but across the street from their house, standing still, watching. Bingo refuses to look. She keeps saying, "Don't talk to him, don't answer." But the boy calls anyway. His voice is soft, sweet. He says Bluey's name, perfectly, like he's known it forever. Bluey feels herself walking toward him without meaning to. Her paws move on their own. The world blurs. Only his voice is clear. Bingo grabs her, shakes her, snaps her out of it. The boy frowns, turns, and walks away, slowly disappearing into the mist. That night, Bluey lies awake, listening. For hours she hears nothing. Then, a soft tapping on the window. She peeks. There he is, staring in, smiling now, whispering something she can't quite hear. The screen goes black. No credits, no music, only the faint repeated sound of someone whispering her name. Over and over and over. There's a lost Bluey episode. Whispers call it not her voice. It's one of those episodes you never find listed. Only mentioned by those who watched late at night, when they shouldn't have. It started on a normal evening. Bluey and Bingo were getting ready for bed. Their parents tucked them in. Bandit said goodnight. Chili kissed their foreheads. The lights turned off. Soft footsteps faded down the hallway. Bluey lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of the night. Then she heard it. Her mother's voice. "Bluey, come here, sweetie." Bluey smiled, half asleep. She slipped out of bed and padded down the hallway. The house was dark, colder than usual. The voice called again, closer now. "Bluey, I'm waiting." Bluey turned the corner toward the living room. But there, standing at the end of the hall, was Chili, smiling, calm, holding a cup of tea. "What are you doing up, honey?" Bluey froze. The voice had come from the opposite direction, still calling her name, software urgent, wrong. Bluey looked back. The hallway behind her stretched longer than it should have. At the far end, the outline of her mother stood, but not quite right. The shoulders too slumped, the neck too stiff, the head tilted in an unnatural way. "Bluey, come here." The real Chili stepped forward. "Sweetheart, come to me, right now." Her voice shook just a little. Bluey didn't hesitate. She ran into Chili's arms. They turned together and hurried back to the bedroom. As Chili closed the door, Bluey heard it again. A slow, scraping sound. Nails dragging along the hallway walls. Scratching. Following. That night, Bluey slept in her parents' bed, sandwiched safely between Bandit and Chili. But long after the house went silent, she kept her eyes open, listening. Just before she drifted into uneasy sleep, she heard a whisper, right against the window pane. "You chose the wrong one." The final frame showed the hallway once more, empty, silent. But if you watched closely and just for a second, the shadows seemed to move, reaching, stretching, waiting. The screen faded to black, no credits, no music, only the soft sound of breathing, too close to the microphone. The episode begins like any other sunny morning at the Healer house, with Bluey and Bingo joyfully playing in the living room. Suddenly, they stumble upon a large antique mirror that seemingly was never there before. Bandit and Chili are in the kitchen, preoccupied with their own tasks, paying no attention to the children. And this is where things start to go wrong. Bluey and Bingo decide to play making faces in front of this strange mirror. They make silly faces and giggle, but it quickly becomes obvious that their reflections are not just copies. They are different. The reflections in the mirror smile wider than Bluey and Bingo. Their eyes begin to look unnaturally large and bright, almost like someone lurking in the shadows waiting for their moment. You know how a clown's eyes look? Exactly like that. The children at first don't notice anything suspicious, thinking it's part of the game. They try to mimic their reflections, but the reflections start to show something truly chilling. Bandit and Chili appear in the mirror, but their faces are distorted with fear, and their smiles are painted on, empty. They look miserable, almost like lifeless mannequins. Then, the parents' figures in the reflections suddenly vanish, leaving only the empty, sinisterly smiling reflections of the children. Bluey, sensing that something is deeply wrong, tries to touch her reflection. But instead of touching, her reflection sharply pushes her hand away. And you wouldn't believe it, a faint red streak resembling blood appears on the mirror. It was impossible and unnatural. Bluey and Bingo step away from the mirror, but the nightmare is just beginning. Their own faces slowly, almost imperceptibly begin to distort, mirroring the sinister smiles of their reflections. Their voices, when they try to speak, become deeper, raspier, completely unlike the sweet puppies they are. And then the most unsettling part happens. The background of the room slowly, inexorably begins to transform into a dark, damp sewer. The sounds from the cartoon gradually morph into dripping water, muffled footsteps, and a quiet, sinister giggle that seems to come from everywhere, enveloping the entire space. The final shot, the camera slowly, agonizingly zooms in on the mirror, and in it, there is no longer a reflection of the room. There is a dark, bottomless well, and for a moment, just a second, from that abyss emerges a single, huge, predatory yellow eye. Then the episode abruptly cuts off, the screen filled with a deep, dead black. Bluey received a new antique doll. It was beautiful, with large glass eyes, but those eyes seemed too alive. The doll always faced Bluey, no matter where it was placed, even if Bluey turned away or moved to another room. At first, it was amusing. Bluey would laugh trying to catch the doll in the act, but it invariably stared back at her. However, Bluey then started noticing her other toys disappearing or breaking whenever the doll was near. Her favorite plush dinosaur ended up with a torn leg, and several building blocks simply vanished. At night, when everyone was asleep, Bluey would wake up. She heard soft, cautious footsteps from the living room. Then she would see a shadow gliding across the floor, though the doll was supposed to be on a shelf in its box. Bluey would pretend to be asleep, but her heart pounded. Soon, the doll began leaving gifts. Terrifying, crudely made figures from twigs, fur, and something else Bluey couldn't identify. These figures always appeared near Bluey's bed. Mum and Dad saw nothing strange when Bluey showed them the broken toys or odd figures, attributing it all to kids' games or you must be clumsy. Their denial only deepened Bluey's loneliness. One morning, Bluey woke to find the doll sitting right by her bed. Its eyes were not merely glass, they were absolute bottomless black voids. The doll held one of Bluey's old torn plush toys, that very dinosaur. A slow, distorted, almost sinister smile appeared on its face, unnaturally stretching its porcelain cheeks. The doll slowly raised its thin arm and with terrifying precision pointed at sleeping Bingo in the adjacent bed. Bluey froze, daring not to breathe. The room grew intensely cold, the air around the doll seemed to freeze. A sound, a very faint, barely audible rustle, as if something unseen was moving around the doll, and then a crack, like something fragile breaking. Bluey heard Bingo quietly sigh in her sleep as if dreaming. The doll didn't move, but its black eyes were fixed on Bingo. In the morning, when Bluey finally forced herself to move, the doll was no longer by the bed. It stood on the shelf again in its box as if nothing had happened. But the dinosaur it had held that night was now missing a leg. It was torn off and gone. And Bingo woke up staring at the wall, her eyes slightly wide, and on her neck Bluey saw a faint red mark, like a messy bite. Late evening at the Healer house. The rain outside has stopped, with only occasional drops falling from the roof. Bluey can't sleep. She quietly gets out of bed, her paws softly patting on the rug. An eerie silence hangs in the house, broken only by the faint creaking of the old wooden floorboards. In the hallway, Bluey freezes. A tall, unnatural figure looms in the dim light. A wooden body, angular limbs. On a disproportionately large head are enormous, unmoving eyes staring into the void. A wide, frightening grin is fixed on its wooden face. In one wooden hand, the figure clutches an elongated object resembling a baseball bat, dragging its handle along the floor. Bluey's heart pounds with terror. She tries to call for Mum or Dad, but her voice seems to catch in her throat, unable to escape. The wooden head slowly turns, and the empty black pupils of its huge eyes lock onto her, piercing the darkness. A quiet scraping sound echoes, as if two dry pieces of wood are rubbing against each other. The figure begins to move slowly, jerkily towards the frozen Bluey, dragging the heavy bat which thuds dully against the floor. Bluey backs away, pressing herself against the wall. She tries to breathe, but the air feels thick in her lungs. The wooden figure approaches, and now Bluey can see every crack on its wooden face, every jagged edge of its fixed smile. The scent of old wood and dampness emanates from it. The figure stops directly in front of Bluey, towering over her with its unnatural height. From its unmoving lips comes a strange guttural sound, devoid of any inflection. Tongue. Sahur. Bluey flinches and recoils, feeling an icy dread grip her entire body. The wooden hand slowly raises the bat, its shadow sliding ominously across the wall. At that moment, a sleepy Bingo appears in the hallway, rubbing her eyes groggily with her paws. She looks at the strange wooden guest with confusion. Bluey, who's that? She whispers, yawning. The wooden figure slowly turns its enormous empty eyes towards little Bingo and repeats the strange incantation. Tongue. Sahur. Suddenly, the light in the hallway begins to flicker, casting jerky shadows on the walls. A persistent, monotonous rhythm echoes throughout the house, like the dull thudding of a wooden bat against the floor. Tongue. 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 Mum and Dad sleep soundly, oblivious to the unfolding nightmare. It seems that only the frightened Bluey and Bingo can hear and see this terrifying night visitor and the growing ominous noise. The wooden figure takes a slow, creaking step towards Bingo, its wooden legs making a chilling scraping sound on the floor. Bluey, gathering the last of her courage, lunges forward, trying to shield her sister with her body. The wooden figure raises the bat high above little Bingo's head. At that moment, the image momentarily distorts. The colors fade and the outlines blur, as if one's vision is losing focus from sheer terror. The final scene shows the dark, empty hallway. Only the monotonous rhythmic thudding like the sound of a wooden bat echoes in the silence, and a quiet, sinister whisper repeating the strange words. Tongue. Sahur. Then a complete oppressive silence descends. The screen slowly fades to absolute black.